This is the Brave New Coin Crypto Conversation, hosted by Andy Pickering.
Hi everyone, Andy Pickering here. I'm your host and welcome to the Crypto Conversation, a Brave New Coin podcast where we talk to the people building the future in the Bitcoin, blockchain and cryptocurrency space. Good news, team. We have an exciting new sponsor here at the Crypto Conversation, and well, they are perfectly positioned for today's changing investment environment. Because with market volatility so high and the expected returns for stocks and bonds so low, I tend to agree with the analysts at JP Morgan who have declared that alternative assets are no longer optional. And that is good news for those platforms who can provide access to the top alternative asset classes like Masterworks. Yes, Masterworks.io has solidified itself as the platform for investing in contemporary art. And Masterworks is on a mission to democratize art investing, which is a 1.7 trillion asset class. How do they do this? Well, Masterworks is the first platform to make it possible to purchase shares that represent an investment in multi-million-dollar artworks from iconic artists such as Banksy, Kaws, and Basquiat, all at a price point tailored to you. And since 2017, Masterworks has sold a number of iconic artworks, with each returning over 30% net IRR to investors. Legally, I have to follow that with past performance is no guarantee of future results. Now, if you want to get in early, just go to masterworks.art/cryptoconversations to skip their waitlist. That's masterworks.art/cryptoconversations. And you can see important Regulation A disclosures at masterworks.io/CD. And now it's on with the show. My guest today is Shiv Malik. Shiv is the CEO of Pool, a data platform and marketplace that wants to increase data privacy and enable individuals to monetize their own data. Welcome to the show, Shiv.
Hi, Andy. Great to be here.
Great to have you here. So you have a little bit of an interesting background, and I imagine that has some part to play in what you're doing now with Pool. So I'd be interested to learn a little bit more about your background myself, as I'm sure the listeners will be. So let's do what we always do at the beginning. Could you please introduce yourself, Shiv, and tell us a little bit about what you've been doing in the lead up to your involvement with Pool, please?
Yeah, so I've had a bit of a peripatetic career. I guess, that kind of makes up most people in Web3. Either you're from, a very heavy tech background, or you kind of dropped in from a completely different vertical. Yes. And you kind of become enamored with it all. So I'm of the latter camp. I was an investigative journalist for about a decade. Also during that time, I was a sort of author and a broadcaster. I've done a podcast. I started a think tank, lots of sort of things. I like to, I'm one of those people who likes to do lots of different things. Not particularly well, perhaps, in some regards, but nevertheless, trying my hand. So I guess the journey to this particular space, or to Web3, which I've been in for now for about 4.5 years, 5 years now, sort of took lots of different turns. So in 2010, I wrote a book called Jilted Generation. And one of the passions I have is kind of economics. And that was about how, millennials were going to have, their life course seemed to not be as good as their parents' life course. So in terms of, getting on the housing ladder, getting a kind of stable foot in a career, raising a family, all these things seem to be delayed. So that was the kind of basic premise of the book. And unfortunately, I think, all of that stuff has kind of come true, a decade and a bit later. We're still living in that. And, that really kind of whet my appetite again for kind of digging into economics. Not a lot of people had done economics from a generational perspective. So, it was always there. And at the same time, or sort of, a few years in and around that, I was sitting next to the team breaking the NSA Snowden story, right. Which was just, obviously a massive influence, just not around the globe. But if you're sitting next to the actual journalist breaking it, it's what you live vicariously for weeks and weeks and months on end. So if you marry those two things, you end up, I think, with a really sort of interesting perspective, which is that things, economics is desperately important. It shapes entire life courses of not just the individuals around you, but of entire generations. But there's also this sinister thing going on in the background with, privacy, data collection, and power and politics and economics all marrying together. And how do you disentangle all of that? Web3 is just the perfect place for doing all of that, right? Marrying the kind of tech that's supposed to be, in a sense, privacy enhancing in many ways, but you're also marrying up power because it's about money. You've got, everyone's interested in economics and Web3 pretty much. And I find I've sort of fell into my people, if you want. Does that kind of round it up, Andy?
Yeah, that's it rounds it up really nicely, and I kind of relate to what you're saying actually a little bit, Shiv. I mean, I'm perhaps slightly. Slightly older than perhaps the generation you're talking about, but I mean, it is very much felt throughout the world. But in terms of the Snowden revelations, and I certainly do remember the Guardian, which is probably where you were at the time, leading a lot of those stories, certainly from the European side. But I was here in New Zealand, and funnily enough, at the time I was working for Kim.com's internet party as a kind of, I don't know, a social media strategist, something like that. And we actually, well, not me, but Kim brought over Glenn Greenwald to essentially speak at a political event, and we had Snowden in on the live stream as well, which was it was a huge event at the time here in New Zealand. So I certainly remember that time very well.
Yeah, it was this kind of heady days for, I guess, the right kind of people, and it was funny, and you're right to point out, sorry, that I was working at the Guardian. I worked there for 5 years, then on the investigations desk for 3.5 of those years. And if you'd asked anyone certainly in Britain, it felt like, but the day before, and said, like, the government is part of an international conspiracy to garner vast troves of data from your phone, and by the way, they can switch on the microphone kind of remotely and listen in without you ever knowing about it. People have said, look, here's this tinfoil hat, please put it on and go sit in the corner, right? But the weird thing was, the day after the story broke, people were like totally blasé. They're like, of course the government's doing this, Shiv. Like, of course they've been doing this for so long. And of course your phone can listen into you. And you're like, wait, hang on. Where's that bit where we're sort of outraged and angered en masse? Where are the street protests? That's what it felt like in sort of Guardian HQ. What's going on with this? And you realize, or I've certainly realized, it took years for those effects and those activists to really come to the fore. And they manifested in a way that were far more powerful than just a couple of street protests. And then, that anger fading. It resulted in Ethereum in many respects.
Yes. Look, you're exactly right. And well, I'm sure, look, we'll start to talk about Pool, but I mean, you're kind of talking about, in one respect, Shiv, one of the kind of, I guess, paradoxes of the modern internet, and sort of going back to the Snowden revelations, is that now it is undeniable that it's just a fact of modern life, particularly with Web 2, that if we are given nice shiny products and services such as Apple computers and Google search and iPhones, all Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all these kind of things, then the trade-off is that we give up a certain amount of privacy, certain amount of data, and the paradox that I'm referring to is a large proportion of the population seem prepared to pay that price, Shiv, and that's kind of maybe one of the stumbling blocks in the kind of early adoption of what we think of as Web3, until the kind of the user experience can catch up to what people are used to. A lot of people are happy to pay that that data, that loss of data and privacy, it seems. Do you agree?
Yeah, because I think it's pretty undeniable. I mean, I remember going to a Mozilla conference, back in what it would have been 2019, perhaps. And, this is a kind of privacy Puritan central. And I asked the crowd, and it was at a debate that at the time was sponsoring on privacy versus kind of data ownership. And I asked people to put their hands up, like, who owns an Alexa, right? A device. And I think this is near enough, or just perhaps isn't, just after the revelations that actually Amazon did have a unit of actual human beings actually listening to selected conversations, seemingly at random. But again, all to like hone the algorithm, right? So it's actually spying on you. People put their hands up and they're like, yeah, I own an Alexa. And you're like, what? So even this, like the holy chapel of privacy puritanism, like people were like, yeah, I have an Alexa. Father, I have sinned. But why? Why? Because it's convenient. It's just convenient. Absolutely. And there's only so far anyone will go. Okay, I'll give you another example. Like Amazon, longest time I was like, no, I'm not going to buy anything. I'm not going to have an Amazon account. I'm just gonna, I'm going to live ethically. And then one day, I think the pandemic, it probably was the pandemic that kind of turned me. I was like, this is so convenient. It's so easy. I can just do it from my phone. I can do it on a laptop, like a couple of clicks and I'm done. And it arrives. It's brilliant. And, what do you do in a world like that, right? It's really, really difficult to navigate.
That is right. And unfortunately, the modern world is absolutely full of these very modern paradoxes. But let's switch to Web3 and Pool then, Shiv. So I suppose said it in the intro, the kind of the high level summary, as I understand it, is that Pool is a data platform and marketplace that enables individuals to monetize their own data. So let's start to understand what that means, really. But first, what's the origin story of Pool and your beginning with Pool?
Yeah, it's sort of almost related to, it's very much related actually to what you say. My attitude is framed by, that fact that you shouldn't treat people like they're going, I think that model of privacy is just wrong, right? And really, this is sort of in a sense where I've often clashed with other people in Web3 about Pool, about data unions. Is, how should you treat individuals? Firstly, people want to share information, right? I mean, we're doing that right now. We're talking to each other. People talk, they tweet, they're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. It's clear that they want to share information, but they want to be in control of that. Privacy allows you to say no, but it rarely, those tools very rarely allow you to say yes if you want to share something. So that's the kind of the first bit of it. The second bit is that, people will place convenience over privacy all the time because the cognitive overhead for privacy is just huge, right? Thinking about the deep implications of sharing a seemingly tiny piece of information again and again and again. It's just vast, right? Compared to, I can do this a little bit quicker and this is so easy, right? I don't have to fill out a form, right? Because I can just sign in with Google. Oh, God, that's so easy. So, I see myself in that sense as quite different, and I want to just take humans as they are rather than as they should be. But to go back, some of this started when I was working at a previous company called Streamer, and their idea there was so this is back in sort of 2018. I'm sort of fresh-faced, if you want, in Web3. Well, I've been there kind of, about 8 months, done a little bit of consultancy working for the project, a project called Golem that I consulted for. And now I'm sort of starting off with this other project that is looking at real-time messaging, right? How do you send messages over the internet in a kind of decentralized way? It's kind of interesting. And they asked for, we did this workshop about, new ideas that could build on top of this network. And the first thing that comes to mind is for me, is this thing that I'd harbored about data unions. I didn't call them that at the time. So we kind of, in a sense, get to work. What's a data union? It's, the idea was appealing that you could, people could band together, share their information, streams or data sets, club it together, aggregate it, and that you could have a representative. And this is really key, right? Someone who could actually do the work, like an agent, right? Someone who's a bit professional, like an accountant or a lawyer would be for the law or your finances. This would be data professionals working on your behalf, representing you out in the world. And then they sell that data or monetize it or protect it. And then they redistribute that value back to you, right? And that's where the Web3 blockchain bit comes in, right? Because you've got to potentially redistribute funds to millions of people. So that was the kind of basic premise. It's not easy to do. And actually, as you start to kind of get more passionate about an idea, you say, have other people thought about this? What's the history? And there's a bit of a graveyard of failures around data unions. So again, banded together with other people who had failed at this, and again asked, what were those lessons, and tried to club something together, and that's what the first emanation was. Back in kind of 2019, then when we built something out, was a kind of basic framework for getting a data union off the ground.
Okay, well, it's kind of a it's a funny phrase, a data union, Shiv. So I haven't heard that phrase before. And look, you're obviously from the UK. I think you're probably based in the UK. I don't imagine many Americans will be familiar with the term data union either. So maybe love for you to kind of explain it a bit more, and perhaps do that by using some some use case examples or anything like that that you can think of to kind of provide those examples of how a data what a data union is, and how the data marketplace would work.
I think, people also use the term sometimes data cooperatives, data trusts, and then in legislation that's coming out in the EU, they're using the term data intermediaries. So there's a few names for this thing, but let me give you some practical examples then. And they exist already today. You can actually go and join these these organizations if you want. So sometimes, so I'll give you an example of Ozone. Started by a guy called Lyndon O, and they have about 110,000 members now, which is not bad. Similarly, there's another thing called Swash, and what they are is a kind of browser plugin. So you download a browser plugin, and it says, look, are you comfortable with kind of sharing this basic information, which is your kind of clickstream data coming out of your browser? Swash, for example, shows you the data that's actually leaving that browser plugin, and if you're uncomfortable with sharing at any point, you kind of say, you can always delete those bits of information, right? Great. So that data then goes to the data union en masse. So there's 110,000 people's kind of clickstream data coming in, and then they can talk to buyers about selling that data, which they do, and then they redistribute the money back to you. So these browser plugins have wallets in them. Some other examples: financial transaction data. So in the EU, we have open banking, which means that with a couple of clicks, you can share your banking data. Now, your bank already sells your banking data. They just don't give you a cut of that, right? And they don't really ask your overt permission by any means. So, joining a data union, in a sense, allows you to do what your bank is already doing. And of course, Google's already monetizing your clickstream data by and large. Other examples. Again, so Unbanks is an example of that clickstream, of that financial transaction data union, or in Belgium, Cake has got 120,000 members. Then, there's mobility data unions. Demo is an example of that. I'm just speaking to some other people wanting to start the same kinds of things where you can share data from your car, right? Can you get data unions from, mobile apps? Zimbezi is a good example of that. They haven't issued their mobile app yet, but that's coming. So it's all very verdant, right? What else could you share? There's so much when you start thinking about it, right? And we envisage a world where people aren't just joining one data union, and they're joining several of them at the same time.
Yeah, well, I think that makes sense. And, as technology continues the relentless march, and we all just begin or continue to produce more and more data, then it makes sense that people will they'll slowly begin to realize this, and if given an opportunity for them to manage and monetize, it makes sense that people will start to do so. I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, Andy, presumably when you have legal issues, you probably don't go at them yourself. You ring up a lawyer, right? Which is an agent acting for you. And the same presumably goes for your accounts. If you had an engineering issue, you wouldn't, you'd bring in an architect. So people bring in specialists and agents who kind of represent them and try and provide them with services in their best interest all the time. So why don't we do that with data, right? And the reason is because largely, this stuff has been siloed. You can't get at it. People don't think it's quite valuable enough, but you also do have to kind of aggregate people and club them together. So all of this is sort of, in a sense, pretty difficult to do technically. And we kind of mastered that. But from a mental perspective, you're like, oh, yeah, sure. My data's worth something, and I'll have an agent who represents me and many others like together.
Okay, it sounds fascinating, Shiv. Then, so explain or tell us how you start to bring all this together in terms of, where you are, I suppose, on the roadmap. When do we launch, or have we launched? Where are we?
Yeah, so Pool itself. So I've been at this obviously for a good number of years, and I know most of the other sort of data union players at the moment, but actually what's really interesting is that they're starting to come along and there's people who I don't know at all and meet with kind of every week. So this is a great signal, obviously, that this ecosystem is growing, which is when you need a pool, which is effectively what we do is provide the infrastructure for all these data unions. So getting them off the ground it is difficult, but what they all need is a couple of things, right? Or three things in particular. They all need messaging networks. They all need payment rails, right? They all need payment rails because the data buyers come in, they also pay with fiat. So you also need that little conversion to work, but you also need the smart contracts distribute to everyone. And then you also need a marketplace. They all need marketplaces. And so if they all end up building payment rails and marketplaces together, that's it. Like this ecosystem won't work. But suddenly you have an infrastructure provider in the middle of that. And that's what Pool Data does. And helps incubate them and kind of, pass good practices to everyone. We know what marketing tactics kind of work and what doesn't, et cetera, and sort of galvanize the ecosystem. Then, this thing won't happen. So that's what we're providing. And there's other companies kind of out there who've noticed that, this whole space is starting to take off. We'll provide infrastructure as well. And that's a really, again, great signal that this is starting to take off. And just to add then and kind of answer that last bit of the question, where are we? So we're bringing out our marketplace, I think in about 2 to 3 months. A little bit of delay as projects want to have, but it's looking, we've got a really, really amazing design team. So this is the marketplace where data unions can highlight their sort of data products to data buyers. And we've got some great relationships with some of the largest data buyers out there in the world. They're really hungry to see what products come out of data unions. Why? Because, they have, finally, they're able to purchase data products where they don't have to worry about where did it come from? Was it scraped from the internet? Did it come from the dark web, right? Where is this information from? Oh, well, we know where it's from because people have consented to joining this data union, right? So it's kind of ethical data for them, which is brilliant. Our chief design officer as well was the head, former creative head at CNN. So we've got a world-class design team. So that's what we're doing on the marketplace. Then we've also got coming along a consumer-facing app where people can find and discover other data unions and join them from there. And it'll also act as a wallet where people can sort of store the revenue coming from all these data unions. Again, about convenience. People don't want to join 5 or 6 data unions, but also have 5 or 6 different wallets and not know how to manage all of this. So that's also due at the end of this year.
Got it. And I'm looking through the website, and there's a nice section on the Pool token, Shiv, which sits at the heart of your platform and products. So do you want to just talk through some of the different use cases and the model for the token?
Yeah, so the token does, 3 things in the main. The first thing is that obviously it acts for us as we've got a lot of sort of fiat revenue coming in. So it acts as a kind of buy and burn token rather in the vein of kind of BNB and Ethereum. And it's done so automatically. So 2% of all the revenues coming to the platform automatically go towards buying and burning the token. The second use case is as a discount token for data union operators. We have a fee as part of the platform, which is 5% for data union operators. That's so we can reinvest back into data unions, keep the software going, and help manage all of this infrastructure. But if they can stake that token inside our marketplace and bring that cost down for them. And the third thing is that, we're sort of a cooperative of cooperatives, if you want, a sort of federation of cooperatives with all these sort of, data union operators and us. And so it will act as a governance token for them as well.
Got it. All right. As we start to finish off this part of the podcast, Shiv, I mean, I wonder if you can give some commentary on just what you think of the current approach, I guess, to privacy and data regulation, whatever you want to call it, particularly from the European perspective, and how you place that within a global context.
Yeah, we've seen that first wave of privacy legislation, which started, I guess, or got kicked off with GDPR in Europe and spread, into the sort of CCPA in California, et cetera, et cetera. We've now hit a sort of second wave, which is coming out of Europe. And interestingly, just before the pandemic, I was talking to a lot of kind of European sort of legislators and policymakers and people in think tanks and the like. And they kind of reached a conclusion that, look, this privacy thing has gone as far as it can go. What we need is competition. And we really need to get into the heart of the kind of technological beast and regulate the actions, right? Not just protect consumers' privacy. Privacy isn't going to do it. Privacy didn't change the competition landscape. And, lots of people in Brussels and Berlin were really upset that it didn't have that effect. And so they've now, we're now on the cusp of this second great wave, if you want, of technological regulation. And again, it's Europe leading the way. So there's actually like 4 different acts. I won't kind of go into every single one. It will take an entire other podcast to do. Yeah. But from the perspective of data unions, this is a massive win. It's a huge win. And I can say that kind of, with confidence, because it kind of helped sit there talking to policymakers to shape some of that legislation. The first of which is the Data Governance Act, which deliberately is basically incredibly supportive for data unions, right? So in the legislation, they call them data intermediaries, but it's there to give them a framework and a kind of a trust mark and some obligations towards their members. So they're supposed to have fiduciary duties, which is great. It means that the space won't be a wild west. And they've said, the European Union have said that they'll give 2 billion in funding to kind of get this off the ground, which is fantastic news. The second piece of legislation is also really important. Actually, I can take the second and the third in hand. The DMA, Digital Markets Act, and the Data Act, right? Both of them contain provisions about data portability, right? This is really, really key. So you can build a data union at the moment. And so these data union operators who come from data science, but also from Web3, are building out these mobile apps and these browser plugins. And sometimes it's just to kind of connect on a web page, right, from your bank. But now imagine if you were able to just share your Google data, right? But with just a few clicks, or Facebook or Apple, right? Yep. That's what the DMA says. Anyone who uses these big tech platforms called gatekeepers will be able to share in real time through an API their data with any third party they want, right? So it's just like open banking in Europe, where have a bank account, you can share with a third party. Great. I have a Google account, I can share with a third party. Well, who are those third parties going to be in the first instance? We absolutely hope, and it'll be my mission. It is my mission to ensure that that's a data union that you go to first, right? So we're witnessing the de-siloing or the unbundling, if you want, of Google, of Facebook, of Apple and Amazon. It's going to be absolutely fascinating. Come February 2024 is when all of this sort of kicks off. And finally, the Data Act does the same thing, but for all IoT objects, your washing machine, your car. Think about that, right? Just a trove of information coming out of your car.
Yes.
Your Fitbit, your smart speaker. So all those people at sort of that Mozilla conference putting up their hands saying, yeah, sure, I've got an Alexa speaker. Well, they'll be able to port their data now to a data union.
Got it. All right. Well, thank you for those thoughts. Shiv, it reminds me, it's slightly off topic, but did you see that story? It was going around on Twitter last week of the guy who brought his imaginary childhood friend back to life using GPT-3.
No, I missed that one. And I spend a lot of time on Twitter, way too much time. So now I'm really annoyed.
I'll try and I was talking about it on a podcast a couple of episodes ago, but I'll maybe try and put a link to the Twitter thread in the show notes. But listeners, if you're intrigued, it's worth a look. It's on Twitter, but it's on YouTube as well. This guy, he's actually a YouTuber. His name is Lucas Risotto, but he does these quite wacky technology-based videos, and it's kind of, I'm not quite sure exactly what's going on, but yeah, it's a little bit hard to explain. But he brings, as I say, his childhood imaginary friend back to life in the form of a microwave, which he hooks up to GPT-3, the AI-powered voice processor, and things go quite they get quite scary. Yeah, it's a weird world we live in.
It is actually a kind of one of the things on our roadmap then is to build a data wallet, right? If we're talking about kind of storing digital stories and kind of almost bringing them back to life or being able to utilize them in some way or another. So, it's been a long dream of kind of technologists that individuals will be able to store their own digital stories, right? Yes. And by that I mean, we create, hundreds and hundreds of data points a day, if not thousands. You bundle, put them all together, aggregate them, and that becomes your digital story over a lifetime, or even a couple of years, and it's suddenly incredibly rich. So, how do individuals find a convenient way of storing all of that information? Well, people said, people have these personal data vaults and they'll like fill it up and it'll be great. And it's never happened because, again, convenience, like this is too much cognitive overhead for people to deal with. And here's another, this is on our roadmap, is to create a data wallet because we think we can do it now conveniently. Why? Because if you join a data union, all you have to do is copy and paste that stream that you're already sending somewhere that someone else has gone to the effort of kind of shaping from a kind of, shaping that data set and ensuring that it can be read, it's got a schema, etc. All that boring stuff, right? And then you can copy and paste it back to your own data vault. Now imagine joining, a wellness data union, mobility data union, that financial transaction data union I've been talking about. All of that can be stored in that data wallet. And then it can be controlled by the same key, Ethereum private key that you control your wallet with. And you can share it with whomever you want, but you're in control, right? And you've managed to effectively silo the best information about you, and it's all under your control. And you didn't have to do anything much, right? If at all, just a couple of clicks of a few buttons. That's really, really powerful. And it's very exciting.
And so I can you can easily imagine a Black Mirror episode here, Shiv, when, your partner or perhaps your mother or your father, they unfortunately pass away, and they pass on their data wallet to you, which you hold on to for 50 years. And as technology matures, then you can upload that into some kind of singularity app, in Web 5, and we get we get that consciousness back in the microwave again.
Right, and you plug it into GPT-17 or whatever,
Exactly.
and voila, you've got your mother back with you, which happens to be very, very strange, and I'm sure will take a lot of therapy to unwind.
Indeed, and I think that feels like a good place to go to. A very quick break, listeners, and then we'll come back. We'll have some fun. We'll finish off. We'll run Shiv through the very famous Crypto Conversation hot take round. Back in 1 second.
Here's what's being said about Masterworks.
My name is Jacob N. I'm from Long Island, and I've invested over $73,000 with Masterworks. My portfolio performance just wasn't cutting it. I researched all these alternative investments, like crypto and NFTs, but they didn't make sense to me. Then I read about Masterworks in Forbes, and I signed up right away. And now you can too. Thanks, Masterworks.
Get VIP access at masterworks.io and use promo code JACOB. See important disclosures at masterworks.io/DC.
All right, we are back, and we're with Shiv Malik. He's the CEO of Pool, the data platform and marketplace that helps you increase your data privacy and monetize your data. And Shiv, you may or may not know, but I like to finish each podcast with a quick round of rapid-fire crypto conversation hot takes. Are you up for it?
I'm up for it. I don't know if I'm ready, but there we go.
Don't worry, mate. There's no right or wrong way to approach this. I'm just going to run a quick series of questions to you. Just want your honest opinions, hot take style. Question one is, Shiv, where would you say that you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-chain opportunist spectrum?
Oh, I'm definitely... I'm just very pro Ethereum, so maybe it's multi-chain, but I'm not in favor of Bitcoin maximalism by any means.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Shiv, what would you say is your firmest conviction crypto opinion?
Ethereum ecosystem, we're all going to make it.
Nice, I like it. Okay, well, Bill Gates famously said that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. So, whatever you like here, Shiv, Web3, Ethereum, data unions, what does it all look like in 10 years' time?
Everyone has a data wallet. They control the information about them. They're sharing it, and in a sense, the mass of humanity is on the front foot once again when it comes to controlling who they are, and they have a stake in the economy once more.
Very good. All right. The flip side, of course, is a famous quote by William Gibson, who said that the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. With that in mind, Shiv, can you think of an example of the future being here right now, but most people just aren't really aware of it?
I mean, 100% I'm going to talk about data unions in that regard. I'm a member of a few of them, and it's honestly, it's really liberating in that sense. But maybe more widely in Web3, I really liking what people can do with NFTs when they're not about trading art, if you want, or JPEGs. Real fan of, in a sense, what you can do with storing digital stories in that regard as well.
Yeah, I mean, well, look, dig into that. So, yeah, I mean, what's exciting you about NFTs? And I'm with you, Shiv. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's fun to collect your basic art-based JPEGs, if you like. But yeah, the really kind of interesting, compelling stuff. It's incredible how quickly NFTs are evolving, and the increasingly exotic utilities and communities that are springing up everywhere, right?
I mean, I just found it really disheartening, the whole kind of NFT cycle in that regard. Just watching, even when you talk to like big enterprise companies, and they're like, oh yeah, we need an NFT angle. You're like, oh God, this is all like 2017, 2018 blockchain cycle again, right? Where you just ended up with like rip-offs of Dentacoin. Which itself is, massively dubious. Yes. Rip-offs of a rip-offs. So if you want, that was all. It's all been very depressing. And what I really love is what Vitalik calls soul-bound NFTs, right? When you kind of really, and POAPs are a good proof of authority protocol NFTs. And I've got a few of those back from sort of DevCon 6 and even before. And I love those. Really simple, you're not supposed to trade them. They just are a badge of honor. Like, I was here, I was at this event. I love that.
Yeah. Fair enough. It's like an on-chain reputation, effectively.
Yeah, or a memento, right? Like, look, I can actually prove I was there at that baseball game or whatever, or football match in 1996.
All right, time to zoom out, time to get a little bit weird just for a second, Shiv. Although, to be fair, we've got a little bit weird so far. But what do you see as the long-term future of the human race? Do you see dystopia or utopia?
I think, so climate change aside, I think I'm constantly worried that, the biggest threat really is that AI will be incredibly powerful and yet will be owned by a very, very small number of people. And that for me is the dystopia. And really that's the dystopia that I'm kind of fighting against. I actually talked to the team about this kind of a couple of months ago. I'm like, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, because if we don't redistribute data, which is like the fuel for AI and how that gets trained, then the mass of humanity is going to end up as kind of digital serfs, right? And that's the horrifying thing. So we somehow have to control, re-silo data on behalf of humanity. If that doesn't happen, then I fear for everyone's stake and for my children's stake in the economy.
Makes sense to me, Shiv. And that brings us to the final question, which is, what is your favorite science fiction book, film, TV show, or universe?
I loved as a kid Isaac Asimov's Foundation series, which
Nice.
Of course Apple have now made into it seems, I don't know, half decent television program. It's very beautiful to look at for sure. Yeah. But that I did history at university, history and politics, and that idea of psychohistory has always been appealing. I mean, who doesn't get turned on by knowing everything and predicting the future? I guess.
Yeah, design your own universe, indeed. All right. Hey, thank you, Shiv. This was fun. I have enjoyed talking to you today. Nothing else to say really, except hand the metaphorical microphone back to your good self. Please take us out. Tell the people where they can find you on Twitter or wherever else you like to hang out on the internet, and where they should go to dig in to what you guys are building at Pool.
Yeah, Pool's website is pooldata.io. I'm, as I already mentioned, spend a lot of time on Twitter, so you can find me there at Shiv Malik. It's just my name. And the Pool Foundation is Pool's Twitter handle.
Awesome. Hey, thanks very much. All the best, and bye for now.
Thanks so much, Andy.
All right, there you go. That was Shiv Malik from Pool. Talking data. Going to be a very hot topic, if it isn't already a hot topic now, which it is. But, I guess as we discussed, it just takes time for everyone to come around to the realization of just how much data they are producing and leaking, and B, how much it is potentially worth. Be interesting to see how Pool goes and other products and platforms like it. All right, team, thank you for listening to today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the Crypto Conversation in whatever podcast app you are using. But that's it for today. Thanks for listening. This was the Crypto Conversation for Brave New Coin. See ya.